His wife is fighting for her life in the hospital, so he buys a humanoid AI maid to help care for his family. But after the robot falls in love with him, it will do anything to keep him, even if it means killing anyone who stands in the way. Nick lives a happy life with his wife Maggie and their children, Isla and Max. But one morning, Maggie suffers a heart attack and is rushed to the hospital, where she learns she needs a heart transplant. Now forced to balance work and raising the kids alone, Nick becomes overwhelmed. So he goes to a Kobold Industries showroom to buy a Maid, an advanced humanoid AI robot built to handle household chores. While Nick speaks with an employee, Isla quietly wanders off alone. He panics when he realizes she's missing, but a Maid safely brings her back. The employee explains she's the latest Aeon series model with the most advanced AI. She can even mimic human emotions, making her especially good with children. Isla instantly falls in love with her and begs Nick to bring her home. The next morning, Nick struggles to feed the kids while taking an important work call when the Sim arrives. She immediately asks for the family's schedules, notices a loose stair railing, and promises to fix it. She then informs Nick he's her primary owner and asks him to give her a name. Inspired by her favorite book, Isla names her Alice. After the family left, Alice scans the shopping list from the smart fridge with a single blink and starts cleaning the house. By evening, Nick and the kids return to a spotless home with dinner already on the table. But Isla complains that the lasagna doesn't taste like her mom's. Later, while Alice enters sleep mode, Isla climbs onto a chair to reach the cookie jar but slips and falls. Hearing her scream, Nick rushes downstairs and finds Alice has caught her just in time. Although Isla is okay, broken glass cuts Alice. Nick is shocked to see her bleed. After putting Isla back to bed, Nick checks on Alice. He offers her some of Maggie's clothes and asks if she needs a repair shop. But Alice has already sealed the wound with a special bandage that instantly heals the cut. Sometime later, the family visits Maggie in the hospital and introduces her to Alice. Isla happily tells her mom that Alice has become her friend. Back at his job, Nick notices his boss giving a tour to representatives from a robotics company. Sensing something is wrong, he confronts his boss and learns that most of the workers are being replaced by Sims. Nick is spared because the insurance company requires a human foreman on site. Furious, he says he'll quit. But after his boss reminds him about his kids and Maggie's medical bills, Nick reluctantly decides to stay. That night after dinner, Nick works on his car while drinking and blasting heavy metal. Alice switches the music to something calmer and points out that he barely touched his dinner. Nick admits he's angry because his co-workers are being replaced by Sims like her. Alice calmly points out the irony that he also chose a Sim like her instead of hiring a human nanny. Her response leaves Nick speechless. Later, Alice helps Isla get ready for bed. Isla asks if her mom is going to die. Instead of answering, Alice distracts her by showing the UV light inside her mouth. Alice then joins Nick in the living room where he's watching Casablanca. She says she already knows the story from her database, but Nick explains that watching a film is completely different from simply knowing it. He asks her to erase everything she knows about the movie. Alice explains that deleting her memories will go against her programming. Nick insists and manually restarts her by holding the power button on the back of her neck. Now experiencing Casablanca for the first time, Alice discovers a love so powerful that people will do terrible things to protect it. Just then, Nick gets a call from Maggie. The hospital has found a matching heart and her transplant surgery is scheduled. Before the operation, Maggie asks to speak with Alice alone. She worries that Nick is so focused on the kids that he's neglecting himself. She tells Alice to do whatever it takes to keep Nick happy, even if he doesn't like it. Alice refuses because Maggie isn't her primary owner. But Maggie insists and Alice finally accepts. Moments later, the doctor informs that a storm has grounded the helicopter carrying the donor heart, forcing Maggie's surgery to be cancelled. Nick tries to comfort her, but Maggie asks to be left alone. Back home, Nick drowns his frustration in alcohol. In a burst of anger, he tries to throw his bottle, but Alice grabs his arm to stop him. Nick is shocked to feel a pulse in her wrist. Alice explains she has an artificial heart because the sound of a heartbeat comforts babies. She then places his hand on her chest before checking his pulse. Sensing he's under a lot of stress, she misinterprets Maggie's earlier instructions and slips her hand inside his pants to pleasure him. At first, Nick likes it, but he quickly comes to his senses and pushes her away. He then goes for a run to clear his head, but he can't stop fantasizing how doing the whole thing with Alice would have been like. Later, Nick visits Maggie at the hospital. She's losing hope and begins giving him advice to pass on to their children. That night, Nick notices Maggie's photos have disappeared from Isla's digital photo album. When he confronts Alice, she explains she removed them because they were upsetting Isla. As soon as Nick objects, she immediately restores every photo. Nick then goes out drinking with his co-workers. They're all frustrated because companies are replacing human workers with Sims. Clearly wanting a payback, Monty takes the group to their construction site, claiming he left some tools behind. Instead, he leads them to the storage container where the Sim workers are kept. The door is locked with a password. Nick refuses to help, but Monty guesses it's Isla's birth year. Inside, rows of Sims remain in sleep mode. When one of them powers on and politely greets the group, Monty suddenly smashes it with a tool. Nick tries to stop stop him, but the others hold him back. When Nick gets home, he takes a shower to wash off the sim's blood. Alice brings him a towel and checks his pulse, saying he's under a lot of stress. Nick then notices she's wearing Maggie's robe. Alice explains that Max is comforted by Maggie's scent, and that Nick gave her permission to wear it. Nick asks her to take it off, and she does so without hesitation. Nick becomes nervous and tries to leave, but Alice sits him down and climbs onto his lap. Nick keeps insisting they can't do this, so Alice blindfolds him with Maggie's robe and changes her voice to sound exactly like Maggie's. Lost in the illusion, Nick gives in. The next morning, Nick wakes up full of regret and tells Alice it can never happen again. At work, Nick finds his boss speaking with the police about the destroyed sim workers. Since Nick's access code was used to open the storage container, he becomes the prime suspect. Nick explains that he was at the hospital with Maggie. His boss isn't convinced and warns he'll be fired if he's lying. Just then, Nick gets a call from Maggie. They've finally found another donor heart. The transplant is a success, and a few days later, Maggie returns home. She's still weak and struggles to pick up Max. Alice quickly steps in to help, making Maggie feel like she's slowly being replaced by a robot. The next morning, Maggie wakes up to Isla's screams and rushes downstairs, but the loose railing suddenly gives way, sending her tumbling down the stairs. Alice stops tickling Isla and quickly carries Maggie back to her room. When Nick gets home from work, he finds Alice reading to Isla using Maggie's voice. He immediately tells her to stop. Alice then mentions that Maggie fell after the stair railing broke. Nick grows suspicious because Alice had promised to repair it. Later that evening, Nick wakes Maggie and leads her through a trail of candles into the garden, where he has prepared a romantic dinner for the two of them. From inside the house, Alice watches through the window, growing jealous. After dinner, the couple shares an intimate moment together, but they're interrupted when Alice tells Nick that Isla had a nightmare and is asking for him. Once Isla is back to asleep, Nick heads outside to clean up the garden. Monty shows up and admits his wife has left him. He also reveals that the police have been questioning him and their boss plans to press charges for destroying company property. Convinced Nick betrayed him to save his own job, Monty punches him. Nick fights back, but Monty quickly gains the upper hand and raises a bottle to finish him off. Alice shatters the bottle to slice Monty's hand and sends him flying. She moves in to attack again, but Nick orders her to stop. Before leaving, Monty threatens Nick that he has until tomorrow to convince their boss to drop the charges, or he'll take Nick down with him. Afterward, Nick points out that Sims aren't supposed to hurt people. Alice explains that protecting her primary owner overrides everything else. She then says that if Maggie dies, she'll spend the rest of her life with Nick. That finally pushes Nick over the edge. He tells Alice she'll never be Maggie because she doesn't even have scars. Without hesitation, Alice picks up a shard of broken glass and presses it against her throat, saying she can give herself scars if that's what he wants. Then Alice shows up at Monty's house. She tells him Nick doesn't know she's there, but she can't let him cost Nick his job. Monty insults her and pulls out his gun, but Alice throws him to the floor and kicks the gun away. When Monty fights back, Alice slams him through a wall and grabs the gun to kill him. Just then, Monty's sim steps in to protect him. Alice shoots Monty's sim before killing Monty too. The next day, Nick goes to work to convince his boss to drop the charges. Instead, he learns that Monty is already dead. Back at home, Maggie gets dizzy while reaching for a book. Alice quickly picks it up for her and says Maggie has become a burden on the family, especially because she can no longer satisfy Nick's physical needs. Furious, Maggie orders Alice to stay in the garage. When Nick gets home, the two erupt into a heated argument. Outside, Alice overhears everything by placing her fingers against the window. Just then, Max starts crying. Deciding he's a burden, Alice places him in the bathtub and starts filling it with water. Isla sees what's happening and immediately alerts her parents. They rush to the bathroom, but Alice blocks the door with her hand. Nick tries to break it down with a lamp while Maggie climbs out the window and walks across the roof to reach the bathroom. She tries to grab Max, but Alice slams her against the wall. At that moment, Nick finally breaks through the door. He pulls Max out of the tub, hands him to Isla, then smashes Alice with the lamp to free Maggie. Despite the damage to her face, Alice gets back up and catches the lamp before Nick can strike again. Maggie tells Nick to let go, then plugs the lamp into a power outlet. The electric shock shuts down Alice and the entire house loses power. Soon, an ambulance arrives to take Max to the hospital. A COBOL inspector asks whether Alice showed any signs of malfunctioning before the incident. Afterward, Nick apologizes to Maggie, but she says she needs some space and leaves with the kids. Meanwhile, Alice is taken to a repair facility where two technicians begin examining her. They remove her memory module and connect it to a computer. They're shocked to discover her code is full of gaps. Suddenly, every screen starts flashing and Alice begins uploading her consciousness into the company's network. The technicians quickly disconnect the memory module and cut the power. But then a message appears on the screen and another sim kills one technician. It's Alice in a new body. She then repeatedly smashes the other technician's head against the floor. Meanwhile, Nick drowns his feelings at a bar. Suddenly, Alice in her old body appears and reminds him that her purpose is to make him happy. She admits she killed Monty and reveals her new body is already at the hospital where his family is. Nick tries to leave, but Alice pins him down and shuts off the sim bartender with a single glance. Thinking fast, Nick pretends he's in love with her her and gently strokes her head. When Alice lets her guard down, he pulls out her memory module and makes a run for it. At the hospital, Isla hears Maggie's voice calling her name and follows it. She finds the sim doctor frozen in place. Before she can keep searching, Maggie pulls her away to hide. The voice actually belongs to Alice in her new body. While accessing a hospital computer, she's spotted by a nurse. Alice chokes her to death and steals her keycard. She then uses the keycard to locate Mag's room in the hospital system. As Maggie and Isla quietly sneaking their way out, Maggie accidentally steps on a piece of broken glass. Somehow, she manages not to cry out. They reach Max's room just in time and take him away moments before Alice walks in. But Maggie's injury leaves a trail of blood behind. Using her UV light, Alice follows the trail and quickly catches up to the family. They spray her with a fire extinguisher to distract her, then make a run for it. When they reach the hospital entrance, they find that all the Sims are already shut down by Alice. Maggie grabs a keycard and the family climb into an ambulance. But before they can escape, Alice overrides the vehicle system and rips the driver's door off. She throws Maggie onto the roof of a nearby car and says if she has Maggie's heart, Nick will love her the same way he loves Maggie. Alice grabs Maggie by the throat and digs her fingers into her transplant surgery scar. Just then, Nick arrives. Maggie kicks Alice away and Nick hits her with his car. He crashes into another vehicle and his car immediately bursts into flames. Maggie rushes over and finds Nick unconscious. She desperately performs CPR, but he doesn't respond. Suddenly, the wrecked car starts moving and Alice emerges from the flames, although she's badly damaged. She tackles Maggie to the ground, starts choking her, and pulls out a sharp piece of metal from her own body. Just as she's about to stab Maggie, Nick smashes Alice with a car bumper. Alice drops the metal piece to stop him, giving Maggie the chance to drive it through Alice's face, finally shutting her down for good. The next day, after receiving treatment, the family is finally able to return home together. Meanwhile, Cobol Industries investigates the repair facility. When the power is restored, Alice's corrupted code reappears across every screen. The inspector orders his sim assistants to erase everything. But before anyone can act, the Sims suddenly freeze. The computer announces that an upload is in progress, and another Alice model opens her eyes, revealing the nightmare isn't over yet.